All right, here we go.
Your video quality is very low right now,
I
Meta, and
know.
I'm not
That's what
sure
I've been
what's causing
complaining.
that.
I
Yeah.
know, Adam. I've been complaining for a week about it, and we have to do something about it because I look like, you know, cotton candy or something. All right.
This is noticeably worse than the past few days. So I'm not sure what has changed, but it could be a video setting, but it seems to be working somewhat now. If I turn my camera off, it may help preserve your bandwidth as well. So I'll do that.
All right. Well, it's time for me to go live. I've wasted 5 minutes, and theoretically people are watching. Hello, people who are watching. Whatever you have seen, don't believe a word of it. We're really excellent, and we're not really dummies as we appear to be. All right, now I'm going to get started. Hi, I'm Metta Spencer, and I'm in Toronto, and I'm going to talk to a friend of mine who's in Newport Beach, California. And boy, I'm very happy to meet this man. We've now gotten acquainted because he lives next door to my brother. And my brother put us in touch, and he is just doing absolutely wonderful work. He and his partner, William Fletcher, are authors of a new book called Reaching Net Zero. And today we want to talk. In fact, I'm gonna tap this man's expertise regularly for the next several months, maybe, who knows. I want to talk to him today about agriculture and global warming. Oh dear, something's going on. All right. So agriculture and global warming are highly connected, very, very important. So we want to explore that and see whether promoting various improved methods of agriculture can help us get to net zero. So, good morning, Craig Smith.
Good
Hello.
morning, Metta. Thank you very much for having me here, and a pleasure as always to talk with you.
All right. Well,
I thought we might.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought we might start off by explaining that the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, refers to emissions from agriculture and land use and forestry and farming and so on. It lumps all that together under one category, and which they give an abbreviation AFOLU, standing for land use, agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I should also mention that you wrote a very nice article. It's in Peace Magazine in March 2020, with the intriguing title, Can Trees and Cows Save Us? So I read that with great interest. You had a number of interesting points, so I will not try to go back over the things that you said, which I thought was a very well done piece.
Well, thank you, because I think we really want, probably some of the issues that I raised are highly questionable, and it could very well be that you disagree with most of what I had to say, in which case we certainly ought to talk about those issues. But let's go with your agenda first, and then if it turns out that our views clash, we'll find it out quick enough. So go ahead.
All right. Well, to solve global warming, as you well know, and I think hopefully many of your listeners know, we need to reach net zero. And that's the point where human emissions of greenhouse gases are such that they can be captured or absorbed on Earth and no more goes into the atmosphere. That's a hypothetical point. It's very difficult to reach as we sit today. There are optimistic persons that say we can do that by 2050. Frankly, I don't think that's possible for various reasons.
You don't think?
But anyway,
Sorry, that's what John Kerry is and Biden are trying to aim for now. Net zero by 2050,
yes,
right?
and I think their perspective is only for the U.S.
Oh,
And I don't think even the U.S. is going to be able to do that, frankly, although I wish it could. But the fact that the U.S. is only a small part of the total global emissions, we're second to China, and it's two countries account for a good portion of global emissions. But for the world as a total, we're going to have extreme difficulty in trying to get there by 2050.
well, China has.
Anyway, I'd like to.
I believe Xi has said his goal is by net zero by 2060. I believe.
Yes, he did do that. He said that not long ago. And again, that is an enormous challenge for China. Again, I don't know how believable that is because China is building dozens of coal-fired power plants. And I can't picture that they're going to stop building those plants or shut them down. So they have a big obstacle right there.
Well, yes, but they're also leading the way globally in terms of making solar panels, and I don't know about wind, but solar anyway. I've heard that that's the place to go to get your solar panels.
Well, yes, China is to be commended for a number of things. Simply stating that goal is commendable. They are proceeding with I think they have installed more wind power than any other country. They're proceeding with solar power. They have a very aggressive program to develop electric vehicles of all sizes, from motor scooters to trucks and buses. I think at last count, there were 20 electric vehicles manufacturers in China. Amazing.
That is.
And they are looking at that as a green energy as a new global market that they would like to dominate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like
So,
yesterday, we had a few days ago, we had a conversation about their desires to dominate a lot of other places, including even setting up in the Arctic. But yeah, so it isn't a one-off situation. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm deflecting you from your
no, that's fine.
very well-deserved criticism, I think, of China.
But I want to get back to agriculture a little bit and say that carbon dioxide accounts for about 3/4 of all greenhouse gases, with methane and oxygen or nitrous oxides making up most of the rest. So another way of looking at it is that fossil fuels make up about 75% of all greenhouse gases. And the balance, another 25%, comes directly or indirectly from agriculture, forestry, and land use. And another key point we have to remember is that about 30% of global emissions of carbon dioxide don't go into the atmosphere. About 30% is captured on Earth in plants and soil. Now, that's very important, and that's where agriculture and land use comes into play, because as we're seeing now, rapid deforestation and a large extent of uncontrolled wildfires, not only in the western United States, my state, California, but also vast portions of tropical forests in Brazil and Indonesia. So with the loss of those forests, we're losing.
Siberia's had wildfires.
Yes, Siberia. Right, in the far north. That's another very surprising thing. But with the loss of that ability to capture carbon, our problem becomes worse. and uncontrolled burning for agricultural purposes, to burn, clearing land, burning the trees and brush that's taken down or removed is another source of carbon dioxide. So in our book, which you mentioned earlier, Reaching Net Zero, we looked at 9 different actions that my co-author and I felt were technically and economically feasible to consider. And of those, we narrowed down to 5 that we felt were really practical and could have an effect over the next 3 decades. Unfortunately, we did not include agriculture and land use practices and in our estimate. And the reason for that was that we determined that agriculture emissions are increasing about 1% per year. It's pretty much on par with population growth.
Mhm.
And the other thing that there are many things that could be done in terms of changing crops, different methods of fertilizing, using different processes for raising cattle, some of which you talked about in your paper. But part of the difficulty is the diffuse nature of agriculture. In large countries with well-developed and advanced agricultural systems, that more can be done. But when you look across the world, there's maybe 1 million small farmers all over the world. Very difficult that they're going to A, have the means or understanding of new technologies, and B, resources to implement changes that might be required.
Mhm.
So that gives us sort of a pessimistic outlook about how much can actually be done. While in principle things could be done, how much can be done and how fast could it be done? The other thing is that there's growing prosperity, not for everybody, but in general. And with rising incomes, then people's diets start changing, and the consumption of meat, for example, grows up. A lot of Brazil's work on getting rid of forests is to increase cattle raising.
Yeah.
So there's a huge demand for cattle, for beef products. So that's, again, operating in opposition to what we would like to see happen.
Mhm.
So there are things that can be done, but the question is, how practical will it be to actually make progress?
Mhm.
Let me say one more thing, and then I'll shut up for a minute and let you ask some questions or comments.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to mention is reforestation. Reforestation has great potential, and there's lots of areas in the world, from the developed countries like the United States to many other areas, where reforestation can be implemented and can aid in the capture of carbon. One of the big obstacles, though, is the countries that are probably most in need of stopping deforestation are countries that have the least financial resources to make that happen, and the least incentive in a way, because it counters their ability to produce other crops that raise national income. But I think nonetheless, there should be a strong global effort. And here again, China has committed, and many countries have set targets for planting trees. I think for that to really take off, it will require some of the wealthy countries to provide funding to assist in the countries less able to do that, and provide an incentive for them to do that.
Well,
So I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I absolutely am agreeing with you about all of the obstacles, that these are, I think we even agree on pretty much on what we think should be done. But the question is how to overcome some of the challenges that you've already mentioned. And one of the things, let me just off the top of my head, because this is this is an issue I've been dealing with the last day or two, talking about what's going on in India. There is now a huge backlash against the government's agricultural policy. Modi is trying to start new legislation which will have the effect of taking land away from small farmers and putting in more industrial agriculture. Now, maybe I'm not stating it correctly, and that's, I could very well be wrong, because my friend Doug Saunders, who's a columnist with,
Your audio has shut off.
I'm sorry, my video is shut off. Adam, what's happening? Adam?
Craig, did the audio just cut out for you as well?
I hear you, Adam. Craig, say something. Can I hear you?
Yes, I can hear you. Your audio went away for a moment.
All right. Well, we'll edit. Thank goodness we'll do some editing. Okay, back to where I'm concerned, because my friend Doug Saunders wrote an article in the recent Globe and Mail Saturday edition saying that he thinks that Modi is right on this one, that because the Indian farmers are producing very, very little food. I mean, they're having a hard time. Small producers are not able to generate the kind of food production that is necessary. And he thinks that increasing the size of the farms and probably making it more industrial, I may be misquoting him too, but he sees that Modi is right. I'm really hung up on this one because, everything that I've been reading about retaining carbon or sequestering carbon in the soil with agriculture says that we've got to get away from monoculture. We've got to get away from these, this large tracts of land where everything is in rows and you plant with machines and heavy equipment. And it's not only the use of the fossil fuels for the equipment, but also the compacting of the soil and the loss of—
Your audio's cut out again.
I don't know what we're going to do today. This is worse than ever. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Yes.
now? You can. All right.
Yes.
Adam, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Well, go on then. This editing is going to be something, but if there's anybody watching it live, it's probably very frustrating. Okay. So I am really torn about the question. Doug doesn't mention the climate effects. And you have said that small farmers, because they're decentralized and generally not terribly sophisticated, that trying to share and get them to adopt good farming practices that will sequester the soil, the carbon in the soil, that's going to be harder than it would be to do it through big companies that presumably know what they're doing. And so I can see it both ways. But I don't know what to think of that. What do you think? By the way, I'll throw another idea into the hopper. One of the people that I've talked to a couple of times is a man named Tom Newmark, who is the co-founder and head of something called the Carbon Underground. And their whole mission in the world is to promote better forms of agriculture for the sake of global warming. And he believes that corporations are actually a big asset, that because food corporations buy up large quantities of the produce globally, and because they are mindful of the fact that there's only allegedly something like 60 more crops in the world's soil before it's all completely depleted, and that we have to make some real changes. He thinks that the pressure from food corporations is sufficient, or promising anyway, as a way of inducing farmers around the world to adopt better practices. So I just don't know what to believe. Can you say what you think?
Well, like you say, there are improved technologies. Again, I'm not an agricultural expert, so I won't comment on that. I know there are researchers that are showing different crops can be genetically modified. And there's a word that scares a lot of people, but at any rate, can be modified to develop more intense root systems, become more drought resistant, and store more carbon underground in extensive root systems. I thought that was an interesting concept. Certainly there are different processes that can be used in raising livestock to reduce methane emissions and fossil fuel consumption. One interesting article I saw recently had to do with feeding cattle a feed made from seaweed, which apparently reduces the amount of methane they emit. So there are lots of things, and I'm sure we're going to find lots of people working on this, because it's one of the areas that it sort of stands out with the need to have more progress made. From the U.S. perspective, this is a very significant time that you and I are talking. Our much maligned electoral college is voting now to confirm the election of President-elect Joe Biden, and we'll all hope that that will go through despite any bumps in the road. But he has made a strong commitment to rejoin the Paris Treaty. John Kerry is an excellent, talented, well-respected person to lead the charge. And hopefully with the U.S. trying to get back into a position of setting an example and contributing to this global problem, we can see some real progress. So
yes,
we're all optimistic
I was
about
excited about last night. I saw Christian Amanpour interview John Kerry, and the man's got fire in his belly. He's really onto it. I think he's committed, and he sounds pretty optimistic. So, yeah.
Yes. So there's a lot to be done. It's not going to happen quickly. I think the key thing that my co-author and I keep stressing is that we need to have more emphasis on public education. We have to get our young people who are going to be most affected by this involved. Without their strong support and action and incentives, it's going to be a difficult problem to solve.
Well, we don't have to motivate the young people. They're motivating us. By golly, they're ahead of us, really. I mean,
we've seen
the
some
same
good
conversation that I remember where John Kerry was interviewed, Christiane also interviewed Greta Thunberg. And, she says she's been rather surprised that despite the fact that COVID has put us all into bad trouble this year, that she thought that was going to completely derail all the efforts that she'd been making to motivate people on the climate change issue. And she said, no, that there's a lot still going on and people haven't dropped the idea. They can't go out in the streets, but the young people are actually way ahead of us. And bless her heart, she's, you know, we've got to be thankful for a young woman like
Oh,
that.
yes,
Yeah,
I agree. She is,
yeah, yeah. Let's
she's
talk about trees before
an
we give up.
inspiration.
Yeah, she is. Let's talk about trees a little bit because I'm with you that we need. I believe that this outfit in Zurich a year or so ago said we have 3 trillion trees on the planet and we need another 1 trillion more. Well, which means that we probably have to plant about 2 trillion more because half of them are going to die. In fact, more than half probably.
Right. Yeah.
But now this is very much on my mind. I don't know where you're going to plant them because it's a lot of work. 1 trillion is 1,000 billion. Now, when Canada says we'll plant some trees, they're talking about 1 billion or a couple of billion, maybe. And most other countries are talking about 1 or 2 billion. Listen, guys, 1,000 is a lot more than 1 or 2. And we really have
a lot more trees,
a lot more energy into this reforestation or afforestation. And I don't know how you're going to do it because the only places where you can plant them are generally some distance away from farms and cities. So what are you going to do? Well, I was worried, thinking a couple of years ago that maybe the solution would be drones. You know, you could plant trees from drones where they shoot things into the soil. They're doing it, but I don't think that it's as promising as I'd hoped. And I am just not, I'm really stumped about where we're going to plant these trees. Now, one of the things that the guys in Zurich said, well, let's plant them. They didn't say it really. They said where they will be planted or where they will grow is in the Arctic. And it's true that as warming takes place in the Arctic, trees are growing where they don't belong. They shouldn't be there. And in fact, the trouble is they actually generally tend to warm the soil, which means melting the permafrost even faster. And I think probably if anything is going to kill us, it'll be quicker than by 2050. It'll be the runaway permafrost, you know, the methane melting up there. So I don't want any more trees planted up there. And as a matter of fact, I'm very keen on these people in Siberia who go around knocking trees down, saying that what they need is a lot of big animals that will trample the saplings and not let trees grow there, because the trees are taking over and they don't, you know, it's not good news. I don't know where to do it. I have you looked into tree planting in urban areas? You know, there are empty parking lots and I got lawn out there that I'd love to get rid of and replant with trees and so on. And we could do quite a bit by planting densely in cities, because that's where people exist and can look after them. The first couple of years, you got to water the trees and weed them and stuff. And if you just plant them out on top of a mountain someplace, nobody's going to do that. Give me some thoughts of how to do the reforestation and get it done.
I think there are new studies that indicate that urban trees do a lot more than people have given them credit for. So certainly that's not a bad idea to do that. And that's something that would meet with popular support. I mean, we had here in our local community on Balboa Island, a few trees that the city came in and removed because they had root systems that were disrupting the sewers. And it was a giant public outcry about it.
Really?
People didn't want to see those trees gone. But anyway, they were gone.
That's very interesting. That's one of the things that I would worry about is they say it'll ruin the foundations of your house if you let those roots grow and stuff. Well, so I wonder if there's any solution to that so that it wouldn't be too dangerous to plant trees instead of where the lawns go, because there's so much, it's very bad. The lawns are very bad. We could replace them with trees.
Yeah. Well, it's just a matter of finding the right kind of tree, I think. But, you know, in our research, I think we determined that there were studies, people mapped the entire globe and looked for areas to plant trees. And I don't remember for sure if that included Siberia or not, but I would agree with you. Let's forget about Siberia, but the total area they came up with, I think, was roughly equivalent to the United States in land area that would be available for planting trees, and that would certainly, in other words, the space is available to plant a trillion trees. So now it becomes a question of motivation and how do you get that process going. There's a lot of, it's not just tropical areas also that are important. Some of the northern areas, like your country, have benefit in having more trees.
Mhm.
So everybody sort of looks to the tropics, but that's not necessarily the total answer.
That's true, but I'm just really, I don't think there's a very clear answer. I've talked to a lot of foresters about it. What about planting trees in permafrost? Because Canada gets, about a third of Canada gets permafrost, or if not more. I think I once knew how much of it, but and even, you know, a lot of other places get permafrost. And I think it really, to some extent, apparently depends on the kind of tree. I think that
Yes.
black spruce are probably good for the. I think it's good for the soil in terms of keeping the permafrost. Whereas, oh Lord, I've forgotten the other. There's some other tree that is bad. So you have to know. And in fact, I'm not sure how clear the foresters themselves are about that. They don't necessarily say the same things, but anyway. But we've got to work on that. You know, I think forestry is, the other thing we need to think about is wetlands, you know, peat and stuff. People go
Right.
around, you know, trying to dry up these wetlands so they can make them into agriculture, and we need them because that peat is a real place where the, you know, carbon is sequestered, and we want to keep it. Yeah. So you don't have any peat in California, do you?
Anyway,
Peatlands, they're for, you know, peat bog.
no, I don't, not to my knowledge.
I just have to worry about your redwoods.
Yeah.
Take good
But,
care of those redwoods. I'd hate to see them gone.
I think there's another grassland that is not typically recognized, and that's the seagrass in shallow waters all around the world.
Uh-huh.
And that's another important means of capturing carbon. And it's under various threats right now.
Really? I didn't know about that.
Seagrass. And of course, on our coast, we have the wonderful giant kelp.
Uh-huh.
And ocean acidification and rising temperatures are not good for it. So that's what we need to think also about in the shallow seas around the world. The seagrass that grows there is an important resource, and
Why?
it's under attack.
How did they use it? I didn't know there was any agriculture of seagrass.
Well, it's not a commercial product per se, but it's a means of capturing carbon.
Yeah, but it'd be nice if there was some use for it. And I think actually there is. I read a few years ago about being able to make fuels from seagrass or from, seaweed. I don't know what kinds of, whether it's kelp or.
Yeah, well, some forms of kelp are harvested, but I think that's very minor
Yeah, yeah,
quantities.
yeah. Okay, how would we?
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, hey, let's encourage people to plant some seagrass if that's going to make a difference. But I think that it'd be really interesting if there's an industry that could benefit from the use of it. I know we'll take all of that seaweed and feed it to the cows so that they don't emit too much methane.
That's definitely something that may happen.
All right.
Well,
Okay,
Metta,
well,
it's been a pleasure.
it's been fun, and I'll be back in touch with you. And I hope I can save some of this bad recording, but it's an unfortunate thing because I haven't had this kind of problem the last few days at all, and I don't know what to make of it. Adam, as soon as I hang up, you better call me and let's get to work on solving this problem, okay?
Well, I'm going to have my breakfast and lunch first, but then I will call you because I haven't had a chance to eat yet.
Okay, thank you so much, Craig. It's been a real pleasure. Talk to you again
All right,
soon.
thank you, Metta. Likewise, and I look forward to seeing you work your magic on this recording.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.